Whoever named it the Great Outdoors knew what he was talking about, whether it's the big sky country or the Rocky Mountains, the forests of the North, or the arid beauty of the American Southwest. There just isn't anything to compare to the out of doors for rejuvenating city-dulled senses and putting that feeling of wonder back in the heart and eye. Throughout this program, we're going to explore an area of information that can make a trip into the backcountry safer, more comfortable, and even more enjoyable. The subject is outdoor survival skills, and while we hope you never need them, they detail the kind of information that is better to have and not need, rather than vice versa. Each year, an unfortunate few venturing into wild places find themselves confronted with danger. Quite often, it's because they fail to exercise common sense. Analysis shows that the vast majority of life-threatening situations that people find themselves in could be avoided or diffused. The most significant survival concept can be summed up quite readily. In a nutshell, the most important survival tool is the human mind. The ability to improvise is also extremely important. In a survival situation, you have to make do with what exists around you. It's natural to feel fear when confronted with danger or the unknown. This is a method that nature uses to increase your strength and heighten your senses. Panic, on the other hand, is a thief that adds nothing and robs us of reason. Remember what was said about the mind being the greatest survival tool? Well, in order for it to work, it has to be under control. The real secret to outdoor survival is pre-planning. And while not nearly as glamorous or as dangerously romantic as the image of a Rambo facing the wilderness with only a huge knife, it is decidedly more effective. Pre-planning requires research. For most areas, there is material available from government or private sources, and good advice is often available from stores that sell backpacking, fishing, or hunting equipment. Questions that should be addressed include length of trip, amount of food and other supplies needed, weather, terrain, water availability, elevation, dangerous wildlife or plants, fire conditions, and don't forget the bug situation. In order to study the concept of survival, it can be broken down into 8 separate areas of concern. Their importance in the field depends on immediate circumstances. Should you become lost, your top concern might be orienteering and navigation. But if your knife slipped while wet with deer blood, your first concern could be medical. Orienteering. Jorn Kellstrom, the father of modern orienteering and author of Be Expert with Map and Compass, defines orienteering as the skill of finding your way in the field with map and compass. This skill is a superior way of navigating and far easier with just a little study and practice. The most common difficulty encountered in the wilderness is getting lost. There are a number of precautions that can be taken to help lessen the chances of this occurring. Before starting out, whether it be hike or hunt, notify a responsible party, such as a relative or close friend, where you intend to travel and how long you intend to stay. Should you turn up missing, they would be able to provide search and rescue authorities with an idea of where to start. Many a snowbound hunter has thanked his lucky stars he made this decision. The hunter, hiker, or off-road traveler should not venture out without a topographical map. A compass is used to align the north-south axis on the map with magnetic north-south. Once the map is aligned, the user tries to cue it with recognizable terrain features. This allows you to get a bearing and plan a route to your destination. A topographical map index for your state or intended destination is available from the following address. A compass is an essential part of your outdoor gear, and no survival kit is complete without one. There are certain features to look for during selection. They include the following: ruggedness, luminous markings for after-dark reference, accurate sighting, and clear azimuth readings. The compass user should be aware that the presence of metal can cause significant deviation in a compass reading, as demonstrated by this knife blade. A hunting knife, Car body, train tracks, and even personal jewelry can affect the accuracy of your compass reading. There are also a number of primitive methods for navigation. In the northern hemisphere, on a clear night, one can locate north by finding Polaris, the North Star. The Big Dipper is the one celestial formation that most people recognize and is formed of 7 stars. Locate Polaris by drawing a line through the 2 stars in the Big Dipper that form the front of the cup. Polaris is about 3 1/2 times the distance between the 2 cup stars. Nighttime travel can be dangerous because of rugged terrain, so it may be prudent to wait till dawn before traveling. In the desert, where space is open, it may be preferable to travel at night. Another improvised method for locating direction is to use a wristwatch to determine the north-south axis. Here it is 4 o'clock. Check the accuracy of the watch by placing a twig or matchstick on the numeral 4. If the shadow runs directly through the hour hand pointing at the 4, the time is correct, and hence the north-south bearing obtained will be true. Hold the wristwatch on a plane horizontal to the ground and point the correct hour hand in the direction of the sun. A line drawn directly between the 4 and the 12 will run north and south.
This is a very easy way to find direction when you're out in the field and you don't have a compass. It requires 2 stones and a stick. Take the stick, drive it into the ground, take one of your 2 stones, place it on the tip of the shadow. Now we've allowed about an hour and a half to pass, and we're going to come back and take a look at our improvised navigational device. We've placed the second stone on the tip of the shadow where it lies right now. And we're going to see that a line drawn between the 2 stones runs on the east-west axis, and we're going to verify this with a compass. There you have it, east and west, simple as pie.
In terms of survival, signaling is used to inform others of your whereabouts and/or your need for help. Damp material is placed on the fires to generate smoke. Smoke does not climb well in colder air, and if possible, don't build signal fires in valleys or canyons, but try to find an open spot with elevation such as at or near the top of a hill or plateau. Before you begin your signal fires, make sure you have plenty of firewood and smoke-generating materials. It may be some time before your signal is noticed, so be patient and persistent. White smoke from green or damp materials is more noticeable in areas with foliage or grass. Black smoke is very easily spotted from the air against a background of snow or sand. A black cloud of smoke can be generated by burning a tire, rubber, plastics, kerosene, motor oil, or gasoline. 3 shots fired into the air represent the international signal for distress. 3 blasts on a whistle or other noise-making device will also work.
This is the British Perry whistle, which I would recommend every parent provide for their children when camping or hiking in case they become separated from the parents. It has no moving parts and it's extremely loud. When used to deliver a distress signal, you simply blast on it 3 times. And repeat until help comes.
The symbols depicted on this chart are international air rescue signals. To be highly visible from the air, they should be 30 to 40 feet in length and constructed of material that will contrast with the ground surface. Locate them in a clearing and construct signal fires near them if possible.
This is a U.S. Air Force type heliograph or signaling mirror. Notice the hole in the center, which is your sighting device. You simply find the sun. It'll form a burst of light inside the center of the thing, and then you're able to aim it wherever you point it. It's very effective, as you can see from this demonstration, and can be observed at fantastic distances, letting people know your whereabouts.
Now that we have discussed both orienteering and signaling, let's take a look at what to do should you become lost. Let us assume that you have been separated from map and compass. You have 2 alternatives. If you're with a group or have advised others of your intended whereabouts, The best plan is often to wait for others to find you. If you choose this plan, it's time to use the signaling techniques already discussed. Try to make yourself comfortable when the possibility exists that you'll be spending the night. Improvise a shelter and build a fire. Be calm and patient and keep repeating your signals to aid those who are searching. If you've gone solo and no one knows of your whereabouts, the best plan is to walk out. It's common to locate a road or a waterway if you can maintain travel in a single direction. Try to follow a waterway such as a stream or a river, as they are the highways of the wilderness, frequented by both men and animals. If you're able to, leave messages at any camp or stopping point. Markers of your route can be made by piling 3 rocks on top of each other or making arrows with sticks or stones. There are 2 kinds of wilderness shelter, those you carry with you and those that you construct from materials found in your natural environment. Carry-with shelters are preferable for trips lasting overnight or longer, although depending on terrain or season, you may need nothing more than a ground cloth. Here are some examples of carry-with shelters. A shade and windbreak has been constructed from 2 thermos all-weather blankets. A 2-man tube tent is both highly visible and compact and ideal for carrying in a survival kit. The military bivy tent M86 is ideal shelter for a solo outing. Tent fabric is the laminate Gore-Tex, which repels water but allows water vapor to escape, creating a breathing effect.
This is the easiest, quickest outdoor shelter you can build. It's called a deadfall lean-to. You use a large log or rocks on which sticks are piled up. Then latticed across that horizontally are other sticks over which you set your foliage, which is then weighed down with other logs. It's a good idea when building this kind of shelter to try and find a log or a barrier that is facing the wind so that it acts as a windbreak. Then you just climb right in under here, under the foliage, go to sleep. There you have it. This is an example of a lodgepole or a teepee style lean-to, which is put together with forked sticks for your framework. Then other sticks are added onto it and foliage is layered into it. One side is left open. The side that is left open is the side that faces away from the wind. Then you build a small fire in front of it. It reflects inside. It's an excellent and fast shelter to build. These are examples of shelter building tools that I used in the construction of the shelters in this video. This is a Mamba from Blackjack Knives. This is a British Army MOD paraknife. This is a mash axe. This is a Bushmaster. This is a 12-inch survival tool machete. This is a Norland axe. You need a larger tool than a regular sheath knife for constructing shelter. This is a complete full-blown emergency shelter using a lean-to configuration which we've made from a crossboard here extending between the 2 trees, which we've corded to hold it in place. Atop that, we've put long sticks laid down at about a 45-degree angle. Then we've laced across the back other sticks, both horizontally and vertically, to form a complete lattice, over which we've laid 6 to 8 inches of foliage. 6 to 8 inches is crucial. That's the minimum amount that will shed rain. Over the foliage, we've laid logs, sticks, pine needles, and dirt to further help with the waterproofing. There are some features in the interior of this shelter which are worth mentioning. One is the fact that we've used dried grass to act as an insulation barrier to keep the ground from draining all the heat from your body. Number 2 is the fact that we've pulled a lot of our firewood into the interior of the shelter, 1, to keep it dry, or 2, if it's already damp, to help with the drying process. Number 3 is the fact that in a real-life situation, we wouldn't leave these sides open as we've done for the purpose of illustration. We would completely close them the same way we've closed the top. Number 4 is the fact that we use a fire reflector. Fire reflector is a simple device made out of logs, as you can see, which reflects from the small fire heat back into the shelter. You always use a small fire so that you can sit closer, conserve energy, because you don't have to collect as much firewood.
It's not just the ability to construct shelter that is important, but also the knowledge of where to put it. A wrong choice can cause a lot of grief. If you want a campfire, select an area with a supply of firewood. Water is also a consideration, but try not to locate too close due to the proximity of insects. River noise can also drown out the sounds of rescuers. A fire can literally mean the difference between life and death, and at the very least can add a sense of security to a tough situation. Fire-making gear is essential to any outing. While you may carry common book matches as spares, they are easily affected by moisture and not up to survival use. One superior fire maker is British lifeboat matches, also known as hurricane matches. They are varnished and will withstand total immersion in water and roaring winds. Common wooden kitchen matches may be dipped in hot wax to waterproof them. Another method of fire starting is the magnesium fire starter, one of the great applications of modern technology. A solid magnesium block is paired with a striker flint, and using a knife blade, a small pile of magnesium flakes are scraped onto some tinder. These magnesium shavings, when ignited by a spark, burn at a temperature of 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure that you shave a good pile and protect it from the wind. Tinder might include dry grasses, pine needles, twigs, wood shavings, wax from candles, and bark, but it must be completely dry. Our forefathers often carried well-protected tinder, flint, and steel with them on their travels. There are a number of methods of igniting damp wood. One is to use fire ribbon, a paste that you squeeze onto the wood. This material burns hot for a good duration. It's also possible to use an axe or a knife to peel away the wet outer layers of wood, or to use dry wood chips, an excellent tinder. Using a knife, you can peel back layers of wood on a stick, making what looks like a miniature Christmas tree. These tinder trees will ignite quickly. A magnifying lens is another method of fire starting, as well as being a useful addition to your medical kit. Camera and scope lenses have also been used. Hunters will have the makings of a very fine tinder by prying apart a cartridge and using the powder to start a fire. Set the powder on some dry tinder. Here are two types of fire that are easy to make and by their shape help to shield the wind. This one is the fire teepee with the tinder in the middle and sticks layered about it on three sides in teepee fashion. The open side, allowing access to the tinder, is the side away from the direction of the wind. The second fire is called a pyramid fire. Two logs form the base and other sticks are piled up pyramid style, much like children's building blocks. It is critical that any fire that you build be kept from spreading. Clear all brush for at least 5 feet and, where possible, build a containment wall of rocks or dirt. If water permits, drown all fires. It is a little-known fact that embers can smolder in tree roots for days only to break out unobserved. If you love the outdoors, it's your duty to protect it. The World Health Organization has estimated that 80% of all disease in the world is attributable to lack of pure water for drinking and sanitation. It isn't confined to third world nations either. There is virtually no above-ground water in the U.S. that is not contaminated with some form of parasitic microorganism. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. It must also be remembered that since water weighs 8 pounds per gallon, it is impractical to carry all you need on an extended outing where you'll be traveling on foot. You have the option of storing it in advance or purifying it as you go. Getting sick in the wilderness can be a disaster, and you cannot afford to let water make you ill. There is a military saying that it is better to ration sweat than water. Your water doesn't do any good stored in a canteen, but should be stored in your body. If you're going to be engaged in strenuous activity in hot and humid or hot and arid climates, you should drink frequently. Hunters and hikers undergoing a hard climb with a heavy pack could consume up to 2 quarts an hour if available. If you are dehydrating, one sign will be that your urine will turn a bright yellow. Perhaps the oldest method for purifying water is to boil it. Boiling doesn't remove particulates or water-soluble poisons, but will disinfect. The water should be kept at a rolling boil for 5 minutes, with an additional minute for every 1,000 feet above sea level, which is another reason to carry a topographical map. After boiling, water can taste flat, but this taste can be removed by aerating, pouring the water back and forth between containers.
This is a solar still which uses condensation which forms on the bottom of this plastic to drip down into a container to produce water in an emergency situation. We're going to tear it up in a minute so you can see the insides of it and see exactly how it works. As you can see, our solar still has produced about 1 2/3 cups of water in about 36 hours. The mechanism for the solar still involves a pit which is about 3 feet across and 18 inches deep, in which a container has been placed towards the center. The plastic is laid over the top and weighted down with wood, rock, dirt, whatever you have, and a small rock is placed in the center of the plastic, which is directly over the container. It's very important that it be directly over the container. This forms an inverted cone, and water from the soil and from this plant matter condenses on the bottom of the plastic, pours down and drips into the container, where this hose is used to suck it out so you don't have to lift up the plastic every time you want to get a drink.
The cold is one of the most relentless enemies to survival. It knows no mercy, and if it doesn't kill you outright, it can quickly wear you down. It has probably claimed the lives of more hunters and hikers than any other cause. Exposure to the cold will induce hypothermia, an overall cooling and drop in core temperatures of the body. What is insidious about hypothermia is that it creeps up on you, often making it difficult for a lone individual to recognize its symptoms before it's too late. Since many hunting seasons occur when the possibility for a radical and dangerous shift in the weather may happen, this is a condition that demands to be discussed and prevented. The wind chill index reflects the actual outdoor temperature. There is an invisible lowering of the temperature affected by wind speed in miles per hour. If the actual temperature was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but the wind was moving at 15 miles per hour, the real temperature would hover near 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Both factors must be taken into account, since it is even possible to freeze to death when the temperature is above freezing. This possibility is compounded by wet weather and clothing that is too thin. Many a waterfowl and deer hunter has succumbed to these conditions. The space emergency bag is something that every cold weather hunter or hiker should consider carrying. Made of reflective material similar to that used in space blankets, it has no openings to allow penetration by wind or moisture and can be worn over or inside a sleeping bag, significantly extending the comfort range. This is the perfect example of space-age technology applied to outdoor gear. Over the years, a system has evolved for getting the most efficiency out of your clothing, which is called layering. When the new fabrics and laminates are applied to the system, it is unbeatable against the cold. Every person who participates in cold weather sports should understand how layering works. Without exaggeration, it is a lifesaver. The system chosen for demonstration is used currently by the U.S. military and is available from Brigade Quartermasters exclusively. It is called EQUAX, meaning Extended Cold Weather Clothing System. When used properly, it has an exceptional comfort range of 65 degrees to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. In a cold emergency, any form of air-trapping material will help keep you warm as long as it's dry. Hobos and transients were famous for jamming wadded-up newspapers into their clothing to keep from freezing. Use whatever is available, such as dried grasses, cattail fluff, papers, and rags. Only in an extended emergency does the need for food become life-threatening, and then only after other survival needs have been accounted for. There is a romantic concept of being able to live off the land, which does not fit reality for any but the most skilled woodsman. Even the best hunter or fisherman has off days, and anyone who has foraged for wild edibles knows that if the season is wrong, the pot may well go empty, besides the fact that often the nutritional value of the food does not equal the calories burnt in harvesting. This deficit spending is the antithesis of survival. What can be a rewarding experience when you have a cooler full of steaks back at base camp can turn to slim pickings when dinner consists of roots, berries, or leaves. The best tools for finding food in the wilderness are firearms, archery, and fishing equipment. Couple these with a little hunting savvy, and you're not likely to starve. A number of the techniques depicted can inflict extreme pain on an animal. They are not for casual use or amusement, but rather for what the early American fur trappers called starvin' times. It has been demonstrated to the author and others that sportsmen who respect nature are more likely to share in her bounty. Another principle that applies to wilderness foraging for food is that you are eating for nourishment rather than amusement. While venison roasted over an open fire is one of the great Epicurean delights, carp is a poor-tasting fish, but if a carp can keep you alive, go for it. An additional principle that is extremely important is that survival is a lot like war. You have to pull out all the stops and fight dirty. This means abandoning the ethical conduct of the sportsman and using every tool and trick at your disposal to find food. This means using illegal techniques, but it is very unlikely a person in a survival situation would face criminal charges for poaching, and regardless, it is better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Now we have some examples of improvised fishing spears. This particular model is made from a conventional knife lashed to a spear with paracord. The knife we've used here is a new Army M9 bayonet. This is an example of a hollow-handled knife. Hollow-handled knives are very prominent right now. This particular model, an excellent example, was made by Chris Reeve from One Piece of Steel. It's just inserted on a stick and then it's lashed down with string, fishing line, or wire. Third model is a frog gig. Can easily be used for small fish. Simply cork the barbs and carry it in your pack. Find a stick in the woods and attach it. This is a truly improvised fishing spear made from a forked stick with 2 sharpened barbs, totally impaling the fish and securing it. When you use a fishing spear, an improvised fishing spear, if possible, try to pin the fish to the bottom of the stream. This is a figure 4 deadfall trap, which uses 3 sticks and a series of notches and grooves to drop a weight upon an animal that comes trying to steal the bait from the trap. You'll notice that the trap forms a figure 4 where the trap gets its name from. It uses this rock in order to drop right on the animal. You have a notch here, a groove here, a series of 2 combining grooves, and this is where the bait is placed. This point holds the rock, and in just a second we're going to demonstrate and trigger the trap. Now that our figure 4 trap is set with the rock as a deadfall, we'll give you an example of what happens when the animal comes and nudges on the bait stick. The animal's caught, and there you have it. This is a common noose snare. This one is made by Thompson. It's attached to the tree, simply laid out into the trail. We set up a barrier which hopefully will drive the animal towards the snare, putting its neck in it and producing this result. Harder the animal fights, the tighter the snare is drawn. It produces strangulation, and there you have your dinner.
The senses of wild game are heightened to a degree that is hard to understand. For survival purposes, unless you're a native and a very proficient hunter, it is preferable to let the game come to you, at least when you're using a firearm or archery equipment. This is most effective when you're near a point intersecting an animal's travel route or feeding or watering source. Woodsmen recognize game trails like veins in the heart of the forest, but the novice needs to memorize a few points. Animals often visit watering places at dawn or dusk. Try to stay downwind of any watering place, and once in position, remain patient and quiet. Superfluous noise will spook game, as will scents such as cigarette smoke or aftershave. Always use cover of some sort, such as trees, rocks, or brush. Look for fresh tracks or animal droppings. You may only get one shot, and it has to count. If you're sure of your ability and the accuracy of your weapon, go for the head. If not, try to place your bullet or arrow directly behind the shoulder of an animal such as a deer, where you will hit lung or even heart. It is estimated that the earth provides in excess of 120,000 varieties of edible plants. In every location and every season, there are plants that can be foraged. However, plants should be considered supplemental to animal foods. The out of doors is a treasure trove for those who study its bounty. One of the finest sources of information concerning wild plants outside of a nature walk with an expert is to consult the 2 sets of edible and poisonous plant ID cards from Brigade. One is designed for the western U.S. and the other for the eastern. Of compact size, a set of these cards is an interesting addition to any outdoor trek and well worth adding to a survival kit. Photos are far superior to illustrations, particularly for a subject as serious as plant identification. One of the primary goals of survival is to nip any problem in the bud, for a small emergency can quickly broaden into a serious one if left unattended. Carrying a heavy pack can chafe the shoulders, even with padded straps, and shoulder abrasions can ruin an outing. Even worse are blisters on the feet, one of the chief causes of which is failure to break in a new pair of boots. Even the finest boots can cause blisters if not broken in before a long walk. Stop to check on any sign of irritation when it is first noticed, rather than shrugging it off until the skin is gone and the very real possibility has set in for infection. Moleskin or mole foam are mandatory for any medical kit, no matter how rudimentary. The most common injury in the outdoors, next to sunburn, insect bites, and splinters, is a sprain. These are often caused by carrying a heavy load over uneven terrain. A serious sprain should be treated exactly like a break, and in fact often is impossible to tell the two apart without an X-ray. If the sprain is minor and cold water from a river or lake is available, soaking will relieve the swelling. A major sprain or break, however, will mean that once you remove your boot, you may not be able to put it back on. You must immobilize the entire joint. Shoelaces, cord, bandana, or other such items can be used to tie, but never tighten to the point where circulation is cut off. It is very important that you check every 15 minutes at the most to make sure that it has not been cut off by shifting. A decision must be made as to whether the victim can tough it and walk it out, whether to go for help, or whether to camp for the night and hope for the best in the morning. Transporting an injured person over rough terrain is severely strenuous, even with an improvised stretcher or travois. It is to be avoided if at all possible. Every trip, other than a day hike, should be accompanied by a first aid kit. The larger the group, the more complete the contents should be. Personal medications are particularly important. The user has the option of tailoring a kit for his own needs or selecting one of the many general-purpose kits available. Don't forget sunscreen, bug juice, magnifying glass and tweezers, blister protection, and dark glasses for snow or sand. Always check beforehand to find any allergies to any medications in the group medical chest. Once you have mastered the basic skills depicted in this video and armed yourself with the correct tools and equipment, you can roam the backcountry with a new feeling of security and pride. Brigade Quartermasters will be seeing you outdoors.